Brenda Whitmore's piercing scream sliced through the calm morning air over Clearwater Lake. "Get away from there. That's private property." She was yelling at a black man in faded army fatigues who sat peacefully on the weathered dock, fishing rod in hand, back turned to her. Her teenage son, Kyle, hovered awkwardly a few steps behind, cheeks burning with secondhand embarrassment. The sharp tang of diesel from Brenda's idling speedboat clashed with the rich aroma of Darius Mitchell's fresh coffee. "Ma'am, this is my cabin," Darius replied evenly without turning around. "Bullshit. I'm calling 911 right now." 20 minutes later, tires chewed gravel as Officer Johnson's patrol car skidded to a stop. The young deputy strode forward, hand resting on his holster. "Sir, step away from that." He stopped dead. His gaze dropped to the battered green tackle box beside Darius. A brass nameplate gleamed in the sunlight. "Major General D. Mitchell, U.S. Army." Johnson's face drained of color. He snapped to rigid attention and rendered a crisp salute. "Yes, Major General." He turned to Brenda, voice flat. "Ma'am, you just called the police on a decorated war hero who is standing on his own property." Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a landed trout. The smug certainty that had carried her through years of HOA power plays evaporated in seconds. 2 months earlier, Darius had driven the same winding gravel road in a rented U-Haul. Every possession he still cared about packed tightly in the back. 30 years of service, 4 combat deployments, a Bronze Star, a Purple Heart, had finally given way to retirement. All he wanted was quiet. His grandfather's old fishing cabin waited like a patient friend. Gray cedar shingles, forest green trim, 2 acres of grandfathered lakefront that had belonged to the family since Grandpa Joe bought it in 1944 with GI Bill money. Sarah's death 2 years earlier had carved a hollow space inside him that no ceremony or medal could fill. No children, no living siblings, just memories pressed into the pine walls, the faint ghost of pipe tobacco in the corners, the creak of floorboards that still remembered Joe's heavy footsteps. That first week felt like medicine. He replaced rotted dock planks, the steady hammer blows carrying across the still water. He repainted the cabin the exact shade of forest green Grandpa Joe had loved. The work was honest, physical healing. Then came a knock. Brenda Whitmore stood on his porch in crisp designer lake attire, blonde bob immaculate, smile sharp enough to hook fish. Kyle trailed behind like a reluctant shadow. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, voice bright and brittle. "I'm Brenda Whitmore, HOA president. I just wanted to discuss a few concerns." She handed him a crisp violation notice. Unauthorized structural modifications. Riverside Estates Homeowners Association. $500 daily fine for dock repairs and exterior painting without committee approval. Darius scanned the page. "Ma'am, this is a grandfathered property. In the family since 1944. "Oh, honey." Her smile didn't waver. "That old grandfathering thing doesn't really apply anymore. We've modernized the community standards. Can't have people just doing whatever they want." The way she said people made Kyle flinch. "The fine starts immediately," she continued. "Of course, if you find this community isn't quite the right fit, I do have clients looking for lakefront properties. Prime development potential." Darius felt the old battlefield calm settle over him. "I'll be keeping the cabin, ma'am." "We'll see about that." Her mask slipped for half a second, something cold and calculating underneath. Then the realtor's smile snapped back into place. "Come along, Kyle." The boy glanced back once, apologetic. "Good kid. Wrong mother." That evening, Darius sat on the dock as the sun turned the lake to molten gold. Loons called across the water, the exact sound Grandpa Joe used to whistle along to. Sarah's voice drifted through memory. "Some battles choose you, Darius. Question is whether you're still willing to fight them." He photographed the violation notice. "Old habit, document everything." Across the way, sweet old Martha Kowalski waved from her deck. 80 years old, Polish accent still thick, living in her family's cabin since the 60s. She'd brought him a casserole the day he arrived and told stories about Joe's legendary fish fries. "Everything all right, dear. Just getting acquainted with the neighbors. Martha." Her face darkened. That Whitmore woman been bothering you. She's been a plague since she moved in. Pushed out the Hendersons last year with her HOA nonsense. Darius filed the name away. Patterns matter. The next morning, a county inspector arrived, looking bewildered. Jim Rodriguez had been on the job 15 years and had never seen a complaint this petty. Honestly, sir, this is basic maintenance. Maybe $50 in lumber. He glanced across the road where Brenda sat in her white Mercedes, telephoto lens trained on them like a discount spy. Who filed the complaint? HOA president. She's called 6 times this week about your property alone. Rodriguez lowered his voice. Between you and me, I did 2 tours with the guard. That a Bronze Star plate. Afghanistan 2009. Afghanistan 2009. Rodriguez straightened. Thank you for your service, sir. He shot a meaningful look toward Brenda's car. Ma'am might want to do her homework before picking fights with decorated veterans. Brenda doubled down. That afternoon, her Facebook post appeared in the Riverside Estates group. Safety alert. Newcomer shows aggressive behavior toward community leadership. Refuses to follow established guidelines. Concerned for our children's well-being. Kyle accidentally liked it, then unliked it seconds later. By evening, she'd filed a noise complaint. The responding deputy arrived looking like he'd been called to investigate ferries. Someone reported construction noise during business hours. You doing any hammering, sir? Replaced 3 loose deck boards around noon. Well, that's perfectly legal. Sorry to bother you. After the deputy left, Darius sat planning. In the Army, you learn that when they come at you with paperwork, you hit back with better paperwork. He remembered something from his divorce attorney years earlier. HOA transparency laws. Any homeowner could demand complete financial records within 10 business days. Most corrupt boards folded the moment real scrutiny arrived. He drafted the request that night, precise, military-grade language. While waiting for the inevitable denial, he installed security cameras. The software of lenses adjusting felt like coming home. Martha arrived the next evening with apple pie and grim news. Your grandfather would be grinning, she said, settling into the porch rocker. Joe would never back down for neighborhood bullies either. She told him about the Hendersons, young couple expecting their first baby, buried in fines until they sold at half market value. About the Kowalskis, no relation, fined for bird feeders until they couldn't afford groceries. The pattern was clear: target the vulnerable, overwhelm with bureaucracy, force capitulation. Classic asymmetric warfare. But Brenda had miscalculated. She'd engaged someone who knew how to fight dirty. The next morning, Kyle jogged past during Darius's coffee ritual. The teenager slowed, internal war written across his face. Morning, Kyle. Hey, Mr. Mitchell. He hesitated. I'm sorry about my mom. She gets really intense when she thinks someone's challenging her authority. Not your responsibility, son. Kyle glanced around, then whispered. Since Dad left, she's been different. Angry. Constantly talking about this huge development deal that could set us up for life. Something about clearing obstacles from prime lakefront properties. There was the motive. This wasn't personal. It was business. Brenda was clearing land for fat commissions while ruining lives. That afternoon, her response to the records request arrived, denied. Frivolous harassment of volunteer HOA leadership. Wrong answer. Darius filed a state oversight complaint immediately. 3 days later, Brenda called an emergency HOA meeting. The community center smelled of burnt coffee and panic. She stood behind the podium in a power suit, freshly blown hair, smile that could sell swampland. Thank you all for coming on short notice. We have serious security concerns. She clicked through a PowerPoint that belonged in a corporate boardroom. Proposing emergency rule amendments. Pre-approval required for all modifications, regardless of grandfathered status. Retroactive $5,000 fines for existing unauthorized improvements. Her eyes found Darius in the back row. Martha stood up, all 80 pounds of Polish fury. Brenda, honey, my family's been here since 1962. You want to fine me for my garden shed that's older than you are. Nervous laughter rippled. Darius had done his homework at the county recorder's office. Brenda's divorce left her with a $4,200 monthly mortgage she couldn't sustain alone. Real estate income had tanked. She needed big commissions fast. Her mysterious client, Lakeshore Development LLC, Delaware Shell Company. Darius requested postponement. State law required 14 days written notice for substantial rule changes. Brenda's composure cracked. Motion postponed. As people filed out, Kyle approached hesitantly. Mr. Mitchell, my mom keeps talking about college fund money invested in some big business deal. Once these lakefront properties get developed, we'll never have to worry about money again. Is she doing something illegal? When adults start talking about never having to worry about money again, that's usually when you should start worrying. Kyle nodded solemnly. That night, Martha arrived with pierogi and more intelligence. Brenda had targeted at least 6 families in 2 years. All sold below market. All to the same developer. Your grandfather used to say the lake had a way of washing out the trash. Maybe it was time for high tide. 3 days later, Kyle showed up at dawn, clutching his phone. I can't sleep anymore. I keep thinking about those families my mom forced out. He played a recording. Brenda's voice. The military guy is being stubborn, but I can handle him. Same playbook. Harassment, complaints, fines. Make life unbearable until he sells. Developer. Timeline's critical. We need those 3 lakefront properties cleared by spring. Your commission depends on results. I forced out 6 families already using HOA pressure. 1 decorated veteran won't be a problem. Kyle's face was pale. There's more. She has spreadsheets. Names, addresses, income estimates, vulnerability factors. Military families, elderly, minorities, single parents. Anyone she thinks won't fight back. This was systematic discrimination disguised as community standards. Federal civil rights violation. Conspiracy. Kyle had chosen his side. Darius's cabin became a command center. Maps on the table. Legal documents stacked like ammo. Allies arrived. Tom Bradley, Vietnam vet. Eleanor Henderson, displaced young mother with every violation notice saved. Martha's Church Network. Colonel Sarah Martinez for military legal assistance. Kyle downloaded Brenda's files to encrypted drives. The scope was staggering. Multiple communities. Millions in forced sales. Artificial tax inflation through a corrupt assessor. Bribery attempts. Sabotage. False reports. Forged signatures. Federal investigators got involved. Developer pulled out. Brenda's lawyer quit. She tried sabotage, cutting dock lines at 2 a.m. Tried to frame Darius with planted stolen goods. Tried one last 911 call claiming he was threatening Kyle at her house, while cameras showed him drinking coffee on his own deck 200 yards away. Officer Johnson recommended charges for serial false reports. Friday evening, the community center overflowed. Over 200 people. Federal marshals served Brenda with indictment papers during her own press conference. Handcuffs clicked. Charges: conspiracy to violate housing laws, discrimination against protected classes, wire fraud, mail fraud, racketeering, bribery, perjury, forgery. She faced decades. The board removal vote was unanimous. Martha became president. Tom enforcement coordinator. Eleanor treasurer with audit mandate. 6 months later, the lake was peaceful again. Kyle got his West Point acceptance. Eleanor's family bought back lakefront with restitution money. Veteran Scholarship Fund raised $85,000 from Brenda's forfeited assets. Darius sat on the rebuilt dock watching Kyle practice fly casting. The kid grinned. Like Batman, but for HOA bullies. When do we start? Darius smiled into the sunrise. Maybe it was time to take the fight nationwide. The loons called across the water. Same sound Grandpa Joe loved. Same sound echoing now over a community reborn through courage, justice, and neighbors who finally stood together.